the legal counsel for the NSAS protesters brought in some of the victims from the night of the Lekki tollgate shooting in court today. A rights correspondent at the judicial panel sitting, Sheito Atigarin, reports that some of the victims are still suffering gunshot wounds. Another had his leg amputated.
Right, let's bring in the NSAS Victims Care Group leader, entrepreneur and activist, Dabira Adeyinka. Glad to have you join us, Dabira. Good.
Thank you very much.
Now, I think you should enlighten us more on what it's been like with these victims, how it's been like generally with them. Let's get to hear you.
Okay. I was one of the protesters at the Lekki tollgate. In fact, I started sleeping at the tollgate from on the 17th. Before the 20th incident, so I was fully on ground. I was actually coordinating on the stage and ensuring sanity, and it was a peaceful protest all the while. And up until from 20th till today, I've been combing the hospitals, even during the curfew. You know, I had to try and, find my way around looking out for victims, because a whole lot of victims that night were taken away. We appealed to the military to allow us get ambulance, and they gave me access to go get ambulance because I spoke with the general that came to stop the shooting, and he gave me the access to go get ambulance. And on our way, approaching back to pick up victims, lifeless bodies and people that were already affected by the gunshot, we were turned back. And from that moment, I knew something was not right, and they were trying to take away every evidence from us. So I started going to the hospitals. I went to Reddit in Lekki and I demanded for database for the victims, and they tried not to give me access. In fact, they told me they will get back to me in 24 hours with the database of these people. We went with lifeless bodies, we went there with more than 55 victims, and they refused granting us access on their whereabouts. So they told me they've been referred to the general hospitals. From there, I started looking into general hospitals. We were able to find dozens of them at the hospital. The care that were giving them at the hospital really was nothing to write home about. Yes, they tried their best, but at some point, they'll tell these victims to take it off from where they've stopped, that the government has tried. And I find it really, really, disheartening for them to say things like that, because this guy didn't make it wasn't their making that this happened. This was negligence from our government to put these people in that position. They were just protesters. They were just citizens that are asking their government for their fundamental human rights. And, the next thing was not for them to start shooting at them like we were criminals. I was there. I was shot at. And someone pushed me out and took my own bullet. And that's why since then, I've been on rest on, I was never going underground. I was busy taking care of these people's welfare from that day till as I speak to you. We still have dozens of them at the hospital. Some of them have been amputated. Some of them are died. We have record of some of them that are already dead. In fact, as I speak to you, one of them that was discharged this morning had to be taken back to emergency this morning on our way to the abbreviation court. It is that bad. Their situation is seriously bad. Millions have been spent on these people. And we heard that the government said it was taking responsibility for these victims. And as far as I'm concerned, they did just 10% out of 100 for them.
Well, Dabira, that's where I wanted to go. I'm glad that you mentioned the financial aspect there. You just said that millions had been spent, and then you went on to say that the government had pledged to cover the medical costs, all the financial costs for these protesters. Can you give us a bit more details on how people have been able to pay for their medical care up until this point, and whether or not any of those monies that the government did pledge has trickled down to the people that you have been in contact with?
I have not been in contact with anyone from the government, body. I taking of any welfare of the victims that I know about. At least I know about 20-something of them. Some of them are around with me. We had to sleep together, at a safe house last night. And when I got to the hospital, in fact, there was a particular guy that died. I think he his own case is not from Lekki, but he was a victim of that 20th shooting somewhere around Lagos. And literally, they abandoned this guy up until the time his body started decaying before he finally passed on. And then there are other victims too that were not, supposed to be discharged, that their cases were still critical. Some of them that had gunshots in their head. There's a guy that had 2 gunshots in his head, one in front and one at the back. And after the surgery and a few days later, they had to tell him to leave. Like almost posing a threat on them, like if they don't leave, whatever they see.
Dabira, do you have any details on which hospitals, for example, would turn away patients that were still critical, ones that you said did so in an aggressive way? Do you know what hospitals those were?
Yeah, Lasut Ikeja is one of them. Reluctance is one of them. A patient that discharged will go to the hospital for his dressing. This guy will hardly have money to feed, and they will delay him for more than 6 hours without being attended to. And they refuse to give him his hospital documents, stuff like that. Especially Lasut. They don't even give them food. In fact, I went to Lasut and they showed me what they gave to these people as breakfast. I've been giving caterers to cook for these people from the 20th.
Okay, Dabira, can you hear me? Yeah, we really must commend your courage. But I'm just trying to get a feel. Earlier on, post the event, there were rumors going around that victims were not coming forward. Having seen what you've seen at the front lines, can you now give us your own perspective on why people seem to be reluctant to come forward? You're the exception, so can you give us your own perspective on that?
Yeah, at first, a whole lot of us were threatened. We were threatened up on the point where we had to start to run to this place. And I thought, I told myself, if I died, the guy pushed me away. Myself and DJ Switch were on ground, and everything DJ Switch did that night, she did it she was less concerned about our own life. I was literally dragging her. And at the event, people were being threatened to keep quiet. In fact, parents that the children operated upon and bullets were taken out of them. People had to tell them to go flush that bullet so that military people don't see it in their hands. In Lekki, around Lekki area, people that have evidence on their phone because of the timestamp database that will be needed for proof. Police will stop them on the road and ask them to delete or smash their phones. I went back to these eyewitnesses and victims that were on ground. Some of them were part of the securities on ground. Some of them were on ground. And they told me, we have to delete our proofs because they were checking us and collecting our phones from all anything that has to do with answers, issues. They will smash their phones.
All right, Dabira, we're really straining to hear you. The audio is not quite good, but you said you were threatened by who and which particular hospitals. I mean, we're watching something like A Room where these guys are at. Which particular hospitals are they being treated at, and who threatened you?
Some of them were treated in private hospitals. Grandview a whole lot of good work for them. They were well treated in Grandview Hospital. Reddington was trying to sweep some things under the carpet. I don't know why they did what they did, but they started very well. But at some point, they refused to give us the database. They refused to give us details. I'm aware that the governor actually went to that hospital that midnight. And we obviously knew what went down.
Dabira, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. It's been quite hard trying to get all that you're saying, the audio, but thank you so much.